The New York Giants locker room took the gut punch from the Denver Broncos, but the mood has perked up and there's a lot of optimism for better days ahead for several reasons. Locked On Giants starts right now.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia China, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all of my written work. And as always, we welcome on in our Blue Crew community members, our everydayers, our newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And if you're making us your first listen of the day, we thank you for that as well. On today's episode, which, by the way, is brought to you by our friends over at Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, Giant fans. So what we're going to cover on today's episode, the Giants locker room, they took a gut punch and they were really down after that Denver game, maybe a little longer than usual after a loss. But there's a lot of optimism moving forward. And I'm going to tell you about why that is and also the timing of everything. So we'll discuss that in the first segment. Then in segment two, I'm still kind of scratching my head over Shane Bowen's decision on that big pass completion by Bo Nix in that Denver loss. Not so much the decision per se, but the personnel choices. So we are going to hear from Bowen, who was asked about that. Now, Bowen didn't talk about specifically why he did what he did, but he did have one comment, which I thought was very telling. And we also talked about that comment on the Giants squad show. So I have the clip from the squad show in which retired Giants cornerback Mark Collins, a two-time Super Bowl champion, talks about that whole idea. So that's going to be in segment two. Then in segment three, we'll wrap things up with a few thoughts ahead of the Eagles game. Can the Giants sweep the Eagles for the first time since 2007? So let's get into it. Okay, so the Giants' loss to Denver was a gut punch. How could it not be, given how it went down? And, the players weren't happy about it. But there was almost like a renewed sense of hope in the locker room. Not because obviously you can't go back and you can't do things differently in that Denver game. But given when that loss has occurred in week 7. If that loss had occurred maybe later in the season, I'd say, okay, that's it. They're done. They're going to pack it in. That's it. Because of when that loss happened and because of what's going on around the Giants, particularly in the NFC East, there's a new realization, and this has been really the motivating factor for the players this week, that the Giants are not out of it just yet. I mean, it might look like they're out of it with a 2-5 record. They might very well be out of it, but right now it's still there if they want to move up in the division. All right, so let's take a look at it. Looking at the bright side, the Giants have beaten two good teams in the Chargers and the Eagles, the defending Super Bowl champion. They were the better team against Denver for a little more than 3 quarters until the bottom fell out. So that kind of inspired a little confidence in them moving forward. They have beaten Philly once this year, as I said. They feel that they can do it again because it's kind of like, riding your bike and, jumping over, a pile of whatever and doing it successfully. It's like, oh, I did it once before. I can do it again. So that's the feeling in the locker room, that they beat Philly handedly, I might add. They feel that they can do it again. You look now at, the rest of the division in the NFC East. Dallas has been up and down. They have a 3-3-1 record. Washington has had injury issues. They're going to be without Jaden Daniels, I believe, this week. He has a hamstring issue. They are, I think, 3-4 on the season, and they have other injuries that they're dealing with. So Washington, not quite the same team they were last year. Even Philly, who leads the division, is not the powerhouse it was last year. So dare I say that the division, even though you have your leader and your people that are in the bottom, the Giants being in the bottom, it just seems like there's not huge gaps, if you will, given how things have unfolded so far. Now, the Eagles, let's, just talk about that real quick. The Eagles are 1-2 when their rushing game is held to less than 75 yards. The Giants were one team that held them to under 75 yards, and they beat them. Denver is another team that held the Eagles to under 75 yards, and they beat them again. I believe last week against the Vikings, that was the exception, where they were held to under 75 yards, but the Eagles managed to win. So just adding up these little things, and maybe, you might look at it as grasping for straws, but it's week 8 now in the NFL. So we're about halfway through the season. There is still optimism in the locker room. The players are not giving up. Even though that loss took a lot out of them initially, when you look at the positives and what's there before you, there's that feeling of why not us that exists amongst the players. Now, some of you might say, they're not being realistic. But would you rather they throw in the towel and mail it in for the rest of the year? That's not going to happen with this team. I mean, if there's one thing we have seen with this Giants team under Brian Daboll, this team has not given up, even when it was time to give up. They have played hard, and they have tried to cling to something to keep things moving forward. That's what's going on in the locker room on a big picture scale. Now, to their credit, there was no war of words like there was last week with Denver. Where that came from, by the way, I have no idea, considering the two teams only see each other once every 4 years. But, normally Giants and Eagles week can get a little, chippy, if you will, in terms of the verbal war. We have not seen that. All right. The Giants, first off, they've got nothing to be chippy about. They're in last place. The Eagles are in first place. But the Giants have kind of put their nose to the grindstone, if you will, trying to replicate what they did against the Eagles 2 weeks ago. Will it work? Well, I say this all the time. When they go to Lincoln Financial Field, something funky always happens. But there's that new sense of hope and optimism in the locker room. They feel that they, are working at it. They feel that they've been having good practices. I know that doesn't mean anything if it doesn't translate on the field. But the point being is the Giants are not down. They're not, deflated after that loss to Denver, which, quite frankly, I think deflated a lot of us. So we'll see if it translates into them coming out swinging against the Eagles, sweeping the Eagles for the first time since 2007, and winning in Philadelphia for the first time since 2013. Because, look, if the Giants can do that, that's going to go a long way to boosting the energy in that locker room. If they end up splitting, okay, you know what? It's progress. At least they didn't get swept. But, it's a key game. And the Giants, I feel, based on, what I have observed and what I have heard, they have the right mindset. All right, Giant fans, coming up, Shane Bowen talked a little bit about his decisions on Sunday against the Broncos. There's that one play, though, that I still have a problem with, and I'll tell you why. We'll hear from Bowen. We'll also hear from Mark Collins. That's coming up right after this. Hey, Giant fans, the NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet player props, building a same game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting fanduel.com to get started. That's fanduel.com to place your first $5 bet. Hey, Giant fans, if you're a small business owner, here's the truth. SaaS promised to make work easier. But now the average company is buried by hundreds of apps that slow down your teams and simply don't work together. That's not SaaS, that's sad. Software as a disservice. That's why you need Rippling. Rippling is the unified platform for global HR, payroll, IT, and finance all in one place. They've helped millions of businesses replace a mess of disconnected tools with one system designed to give leaders clarity, speed, and control. By uniting your employees, teams, and departments into one system, Rippling removes the bottlenecks, busy work, and silos that your software created. Everything from onboarding to payroll to IT access runs automatically and perfectly in sync. It's seriously simple to use, and it gives companies one source of truth for their people, data, and everything they touch. Whether you want to run your entire HR, IT, and finance operations as one, or just fill in the gaps of your software stack, Rippling can do it all. And right now, you can get 6 months free when you go to rippling.com/LockedOnNFL. That's RIPPLING.com/LockedOnNFL to get 6 months for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. Coming up next week, of course, we will have the wrap-up takeaways, if you will, from the Giants-Eagles game. Hopefully it'll be a happy one that we will be able to discuss. And then, of course, we'll just keep rolling through the week with all things New York Giants. All right, and this segment, the one thing that bothered me about Shane Bowen's game that he called, and especially in that fourth quarter when that collapse was going on, I go back to that play by Bo Nix where he hit the receiver, Marvin Mims, for a big completion. And that was the play that Bowen rushed 3 and dropped 8 back into coverage. Now, as I said on the Giants squad show on Thursday, I didn't really have a problem with the call per se because I understood what Bowen was trying to do. What I had a problem with was the personnel that was on the field. So Bowen was asked about that, and he basically, didn't come right out and say why he put, he had Dexter Lawrence and Abdul Carter on the side. Because if you're rushing 3, you don't want Roy Robertson Harris, who's not really known as being a pass rusher, out there. So through the line of questioning, if you will, Bowen kind of dropped a little hint as to what he was thinking and why he might have gone with the 3-man rush that was Robertson Harris, I believe it was Kayvon Thibodeau, and Brian Burns. So he dropped a little hint. I'm going to play the clip from Shane Bowen's presser on Thursday so that you can hear what he had to say.
I think I'm referring to that situational play. Absolutely. I think the other plays throughout the game, it was tempo there in the fourth quarter. I think we ran over 30 plays in the fourth quarter there. So there's going to be some moving in and out, and it affects what you're able to do just in terms of packaging and some of that too, because guys are running in and out. And again, just the most critical moments, those critical plays, I got to make sure that our best players are on the field.
How do you make sure that how do you balance wanting to have your best players on the field, but also when the players are out there, they got to be ready to go in terms of stamina and energy?
Yeah, that's part of it. And I think all 11, obviously the starters, and then all of our backups, they got to be ready to go. They got to be ready to play. They got to be ready to go. And I think I think we're talking 2 different things a little bit about that critical situation play. And then as we go throughout the game, we got to roll guys. You can't play the same guys all the time. So there's going to be some plays in the game throughout where we might not have a guy in there that we want in there at that time, just based on the nature of the game and the flow of the game and the tempo of the offense and how that plays out.
All right, Giant fans. Now, from that clip, what I kind of heard, and this is just my interpretation, you might agree, you might disagree. But because the Giants had a lot of defensive plays in that last 6 minutes or so, guys were getting tired, it sounded like. Guys needed a blow or to tap out. Okay. If that was the case, and Bowen, I don't think came right out and said it, but he almost alluded to it, if you will. So that topic actually came up during the Giants squad show. For those of you who don't know what the squad show is, it's a kind of an extension of Locked On Giants, but it's hosted by Jay Berman. During the week, it's myself and Mark Collins. After a game, it's Jay, Mark, and Brandon Olson. And Mark Collins, I happened to mention my theory that, why were they running, Roy Robertson Harris out there and not Dexter Lawrence? And we talked a little bit about that. And I want to play for you Mark's reaction because I think it just kind of hits the nail on the head with what was wrong with that whole sequence. So here's what Mark had to say about that.
When your best players are out on a crucial drive, that bothers me. And I go back to the days when I was playing. I'm not keep doing this, but damn it, that's why I'm here. When we need you, don't take your ass on the sideline. I get sick and tired of defensive linemen, some linebackers always tapping out to go out to get a break. The best conditioned athletes on that field are the corners. We run every damn play. We can't tap out. We don't get subbed out. Everybody gets subbed out except the DB, the corners. But at that particular point, and I agree with you, Patricia, that play bothered me as well. Your best players should not tap out to be out. And even if they did, if I'm the coach, no, get your ass back in there. We need you. I don't give a damn how tired you are. Get in there. And these guys, and I've seen it throughout the whole league, they'll tap out at the time when they're mostly needed. I don't understand it. Is that the new league? Is that the new players? I don't know. But at that particular time, those guys should have been there at least try to stop the play. It gives the Giants the best opportunity to stop that long run.
All right. Now, you could see Mark did not agree with it. He's like, I don't care how tired you are, get out there. To be fair here, anybody who has ever done any type of strenuous exercise, aerobic exercise or whatnot in a high altitude area, it does take a lot out of you. So is it possible that guys were gassed towards the end there, especially because they had to play a lot? It certainly is possible. But when push comes to shove, I think Mark's point, and I have to agree with him with this, find it within yourself to try and get out there and be there if you are needed in a high pressure situation. Now, clearly Bowen had no idea that, he was going to have to run however many plays. He can only, take it one step at a time. So maybe the resource allocation wasn't properly done by Bowen. You can make that argument. And to be fair, again, he's not a mind reader. He's not, in his mind, it's go out there, get a 3 and out, get us the ball back to the offense. That did not happen. But, Mark's point, which is valid, yeah, you're going to be tired. There are going to be days when you're going to run 70 plays in the course of a game, or you might run, half of that, whatever. You have to be ready. And if you're in condition, you're going to be ready to go regardless. So I think that's what Mark was getting at. And I got to agree with him. If you're in football condition, and I'm not saying that Dexter Lawrence is not in football condition, by the way, so please don't take that, to be a diss on Dex. But any excuse, whether it was direct or implied, that guys were gassed, that's not going to fly when you have a high pressure situation. I mean, if you need to take a rest or something, You do that in between series. Get off the field, then you can rest all you want while your offense moves. So I think that was the point Mark was trying to make. But overall, again, the big problem that I had was the personnel. And if that was brought on because guys were gassed, well, then, gosh, that shouldn't be happening at this point in the season. Bottom line. All right, Giant fans, coming up next, some final thoughts before we get to the weekend for the Philadelphia Eagles hosting the New York Giants. I have some stats, some facts that I want to talk about, and I will have them for you right after this. Hey, Giant fans, Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And just some final stats and some thoughts ahead of the Giants-Eagles game. It's a big one for the Giants. If they can win this one, I think it's going to go a long way, especially with the schedule that they have coming up, which, by the way, is going to feature NFC opponents, not just, divisional opponents, NFC opponents. And that's really where the Giants can make some ground in terms of if they aspire to make a wild card. So let's talk about some of the stats. One of the things that I am kind of concerned about is the Giants' defensive secondary. I do not think Paulson Adebo is going to play. I do not think Javon Holland is going to play. Both of them are dealing with knee injuries. If Holland doesn't play, Dane Belton will fill in. Dane Belton did pretty good last week. I'm concerned, though, about who's going to fill in for Adebo. Now, what I think is going to happen, considering that Paulson Adebo has traveled with the opposing team's number one receivers on the majority of his snaps this year, I think Cordell Flott will probably draw the number one receiver. Right. So in this case, actually, if we go back to week 6, Adebo was on A.J. Brown. I suspect that Flott is going to draw A.J. Brown. So here's the thing I'm concerned with. Who's going to be cornerback 2? I think we'll see Art Green in there. I think we will see a little bit of Deonte Banks in there. Deonte Banks, the biggest problem he has had, his confidence, something we also talked about on the squad show on Thursday. But here's the thing, folks. Jalen Hurts of the Eagles tends to hold the ball longer than average. The average time for a quarterback, you want to see him hold the ball no longer than 2.5 seconds. According to Pro Football Focus, Hurts, when he is kept clean, holds the ball for 2.75 seconds. When he is under pressure, 3.81. So if the Giants' defensive secondary, banged up as it may be, can hold its coverage long enough, there is absolutely no reason why that pass rush can't get in there and rattle Jalen Hurts. That's going to be a big key to this game, in my opinion. They have got to make sure that they get to Jalen Hurts, be it a sack, be it a pressure, a forced quick throw, whatever the case may be. Get to him because he does hold the ball a long time. All right. Now, another thing Jalen Hurts does well is he can move around. And the Giants this year, according to NFL Plus, have faced 6 out of 7 quarterbacks who have a scramble rate over the league average, which is 12.4%. Jalen Hurts was 26.3% against the Giants a couple weeks ago, which is over his average of 18.3%. But the Giants did a good job in containing him, held him to 2 rushing attempts for 12 yards. They've got to duplicate that because Hurts can hurt a team with his legs. Okay, the Giants, in terms of the coverage they've actually used a little bit more man coverage this year than they have zone. According to NFL Plus, the Giants have used man coverage 44.6% of the time, which is first in the league. The benefit, it limits yards after the catch. So I look for that to maybe continue against the Eagles. And then the last thing I want to mention, and I've been calling for this. I'm glad they're doing it. Unfortunately, they had to do it because of the Malik Neighbors injury. But the Giants have been using a lot more 12 personnel, which is one running back, two tight ends. All right. So in the last 3 games, they have used 12 personnel on 40.8% of their snaps. All right. They have even increased the use of 13 personnel, which is one running back, 3 tight ends, to 9.7% after running it just one time in the first 3 games. So, for all the people who say, oh, the Giants got to get a receiver, they got to get a receiver, the tight ends have stepped up because they're using more of the 12 personnel. So I look for that to continue. And, here's another advantage of using more 12 personnel. Better size matchup, better targets in the red zone, and they could be more efficient down there. So we have seen that from the tight ends. Daniel Bellinger's having a really good year, finally, because they're finally going to him. Why they haven't in the past, I don't know. Even Theo Johnson is getting more opportunities. So I would expect the Giants to continue that against the Eagles. So all that being said, what do I think is going to happen? The Giants, at last check, according to our friends over at FanDuel, were a 7.5 point underdog. I think the game will be close. I'm not quite ready to say the Giants are definitely going to win. I hope they're going to win. But, as I've said on the show this week, you just don't know what you're going to get from the Giants, because just when you think you've got it figured out, you think, they're on the right track, they go and they revert to something foolish. I do think, like I said at the beginning of the show, the confidence level is up. I don't think the Giants are going to be a pushover. I don't think they're going to get blown out. Do I think they have a shot at winning this game? Anything's possible. I hope they do, because come Monday, or actually come Sunday night, I want to be doing a positive show for you guys, because you guys deserve it. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that everything goes well and that the Giants can replicate what they did against the Eagles in week 6. All right, Giant fans, that will do it for this edition of Locked On Giants. As always, thank you for spending part of your day with us here, or if you made us your first listen, we appreciate it. The NFL season is finally here, so for your next listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler, the Madman Rowland, gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day, while Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Giant fans, thanks again. I will see you on Monday, so have a great weekend.